What would you do with 3 more hours a week? Seriously, write it down. What would you do if I gave you 3 extra hours? What could you do in your life, in your career? What would you spend that time on? What could you accomplish? Before I give you those 3 hours, I want to tell you a story. I want you to imagine and come sit with me for a moment on the back of my car. I sat on the back of my car in a parking garage, furious, angry, sobbing after a leadership team meeting. It was that very moment that I realized my career was finished. I said to my co-leader, "That's it. I don't fit this culture anymore. He's going to fire me." And she said, "If you don't fit this culture anymore, it's because conflict has destroyed this culture." And she was right. Conflict had stolen 2 years of our lives and impacted every single aspect of that organization. But until that very moment, dirt from my car staining my navy blue dress, I wished it could just be different. What if, just what if that conflict and disagreements hadn't been mismanaged and mishandled? After years of teaching and leading, I set out to figure out, what if? What if we could do something better? I got a master's in communication and culture. I studied peacemaking and conflict resolution. I studied self-awareness and became a certified coach. From all of that, I want to share this message with you today. The one that will shape your leadership more than any other. Conflict is the only way to peace. I know that sounds crazy. And you are probably having one or a mix of these 3 reactions right now. 1, some of us might be just at the mention of conflict, ready to run away. Can't we just have peace and harmony and joy? 2, others of us are reacting with a racing heart and sweaty palms and maybe your shoulders up here by your ears. Just the mention of conflict has you a little emotionally worked up and you can feel it in your body. Or 3, some of us are approaching this with calm. And we've put our emotions over here off to the side so we can wait for the facts and the logic and the proof of this idea. And every single one of these is a natural, normal, human response. Well, I actually naturally fall into camp 1. I don't like conflict. And here's the thing. Most people around the world don't. The ones who do, they're all on Twitter. Okay, I'm kidding about Twitter, but can't you feel it too? Look around. In 2019, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace studied 9 countries, diverse nations from across the world. They studied Bangladesh, Brazil, Colombia, India, Indonesia, Kenya, Poland, and the United States. And here's what they discovered. The divides are greater and growing across all of those nations. And can't you feel it too? Can't you feel the impact of unresolved conflict? Governance has gradually become less effective. Communities are in turmoil. Leaders are struggling. Friendships are disappearing. Employees are leaving. Marriages are dissolving. People are hurting and broken. After all of that study, I finally realized that the pain of broken relationships hurt far more. The impacts of unmanaged and mismanaged conflict were far greater than the pain of just facing the conflict. I believe as leaders, we have a powerful role to play here. The other experts in this series have given you excellent tools on coaching, accountability, working with people that are different than you, checking your assumptions, handling challenging people. I want to show you something a little bit different, a vision of what could be. I want to offer you some inspiration to see why all of these tools matter so very much. I want you to see conflict as opportunity. Conflict as an opportunity to learn about ourselves. Conflict as an opportunity to lead in reality. And conflict as an opportunity to grow connection and build trust. If we take the opportunity of conflict, conflict leads to peace. Okay, so I have wonderful memories of a vacation holiday to Chicago with our 4 kids. They were 9, 8, 6, and 2. And we rented a high-rise flat overlooking the Museum of Natural History, just a mile from the Art Museum. We had Chicago-style pizza. We went at Willis Tower. We went to the Science and Technology Museum. We saw the city. And when our youngest was tired, she would say, "We go back to our Chicago home now." And we'd go back and we'd swim in the rooftop pool. This vacation plays in the highlight reels of our family holidays. 5 years later, I was going to take our oldest to see Hamilton, and the rest of the family was going to join us later. My husband, Michael, not a fan of that plan. Why? Why would that trip was amazing. And they're all older now. It will be even better. Jennifer, that trip was a disaster. Don't you remember? I wanted to leave the 8-year-old right there in front of the lions at the art museum. And the 6-year-old was just crying because she didn't want to walk the 1 block from Willis Tower to the pizza place. I remembered none of that. Not a bit. I mean, I was shocked. How could 2 people be in the same place together the entire time and have completely different experiences? Here's why. Everyone sees the world differently, and we all bring those different perspectives into conflict resolution. At all times, but especially in conflict, we cannot assume that anyone sees, thinks, feels, believes, or interprets information like we do. We cannot assume that anyone sees, thinks, feels, believes, or interprets information like we do. And that is truly shocking for most of us. Without some self-discovery and self-awareness and some self-compassion, conflict will continue to baffle and destroy us because we don't understand what motivates us or respect what is motivating other people. Healthy self-awareness is rooted in ruthless self-honesty and radical self-compassion. Doctors Yarnell and Neff, psychologists, discovered that the absence of shame and the greater presence of self-awareness and self-compassion in conflict actually led to better and more connected conflict resolution. And the reason is because it's always more than the scheduling difference, the late email reply. It's layered with these components that are really hard to identify. Cultural norms, tone, attitude, filters, perceptions, those all touch on these inner stories that we tell ourselves because we are meaning-making species. We create these stories from all of these different aspects and we bring them together into conflict. Self-awareness work gives you this language to understand these inner stories, to understand the layers, and be able to come to conflict resolution a bit more healthy. So in self-awareness work, you discover your patterns, your triggers, your styles, and one of the styles is your conflict resolution style. And this style isn't something we learn. It's something we have to dig and figure out which one is mine. We have to discover it. So typically it's in our blind spot. Over here where you kind of need a mirror. The best mirror that I have found, the one that I have used with my clients and myself for the most effective outcomes, is the Enneagram. Now, for those of you who are saying, Enneo, what? The Enneagram is a personality framework for understanding how people see the world. What are the gifts we bring into the world, and how do we fall short in predictable and patterned ways? Enneagram wisdom describes 3 different conflict coping styles. As I'm sharing these 3 different styles, I want you to consider which one of these could be me. See if you see yourself in any of these descriptions. The 3 styles are called reactive, competency, and positive outlook. People who are in the reactive style tend to look for emotional responses when facing disappointment. Their own disappointment or others' disappointment. Through their emotions, they're establishing connection to the conflict as a real issue and problem. But their emotional reaction can be a shield. This is the group that's like, aren't you upset about this? Aren't you angry with me? That's this group. And here's what's great about reactives. They remind us that we are feeling beings who think, that there are feelings in the room if we want to acknowledge them or not. And reactive people remind us that emotions are at play. And that's an important aspect of conflict resolution, is managing emotions from everybody in the room and your own emotional regulation. Here's what reactives can do to grow. Because those emotions can run so high and they're almost like a shield in front of your face. And if that intensity is so hot, you can't really see the conflict in front of you. So imagine turning a dial and thinking about lowering the intensity. Then you're still understanding yourself as emotional, but you can see to get to solutions, and other people aren't blown away by the reaction and the emotional intensity of your response. The next group is the competency group. Competency tends to look for very specific solutions based on policies, frameworks, and data. They tend to remain detached and they repress their emotions in order to see the facts and the details and the logic. They're very great at quick solutions. They are always about what's the action step and how do we get there the fastest. What they can do to grow is because they're so quick to get to the solution, they can sometimes forget there's a big picture and that there's emotions happening in the room. So what they can do to grow is pause, slow down. Remember that not everybody moves at your pace, and you may have to pause to ask yourself the question, why are we doing this? Why is this the policy? What is the context of these facts? Then you can start to get these great action detailed plans that the competency group is so good at producing. The positive outlook group. When this group is facing disappointment or conflict, the positive outlook group tends to look for the bright side. They are reframing to avoid any kind of negativity in their thoughts, in their emotions, or experiencing a lack of connection. This group says, well, at least, and then gives the good thing that can happen at the end. But when they do that, what can happen for these positive outlooks is that they can neglect the root cause of the conflict altogether. What's great about positive outlooks is that they give us a big picture and a hopeful vision of the future. But what they can do to grow is learn to address conflicts in the discomfort when they are needed and not waiting until you can't reframe anymore. Can you see yourself in any of these descriptions? Can you see how just knowing this one little tiny aspect of self-awareness can inform how you might approach that conflict you're thinking about right now? Here's how the Enneagram helped Michael and me sort through that Chicago conflict. I know about myself that I'm going to make the best of everything, even a memory, to make sure I don't feel negativity. He is going to say, everybody else didn't like that. I don't like feeling negative, so we shouldn't repeat that. And when I state the differences that clearly, you can almost predict a conflict is coming. Through this conflict, we had the opportunity to understand ourselves better, but also develop some self-compassion and compassion for each other. We could come to a connected conclusion rather than dissolving into a power struggle and arguing about going or not going. We could come to a connected, powerful conclusion. Conflict is an opportunity to discover yourself. So I want you to imagine two people are dating. This might remind you of a quite particular 90s American sitcom. So this couple goes on a romantic weekend away, and they had their first real argument over Monica's insistence on several room changes because nothing was clean enough. And Chandler just wanted to sit and watch the TV and watch a high-speed car chase. The weekend ended in a huge fight and Monica storming out. By the time they got back to their home, Chandler comes to Monica and says, "Well, I guess this is over now." Why? Why is this over? Well, the weekend. We had a fight. Chandler, that's crazy. If you broke up with somebody every time you had a fight, then you wouldn't be with anybody longer than. Oh, they start to understand. Chandler's string of unsuccessful relationships wasn't because he had problems with his dad, or he was insecure. It was because Chandler thought a fight was the end of a relationship. So, in real life and in our offices and organizations, it might look something like this. Leader Chad. Chad is bouncing from one leadership position to the next. And on paper, when he gives his resume, he looks amazing. He's got the right degrees. He has published features in the right newspapers. He is well connected with popular thought leaders and politicians. And he can tell a story. But as Chad starts leading, conflict is avoided or outsourced or called unprofessional. Gossip and shame reign because it is not clear at all how professional and personal differences should be handled. So it goes a little something like this. Director 1 comes to Chad. "Chad, can you help us resolve this? We've been doing these steps and it's not really working. Can you help?" Head leader Chad, "No, no, no, no. That's not my job. That's Director 2's job. You two need to work together." Okay. Directors 1 and 2 try to figure it out, still not solving. They need some leadership and clarity about how to do this. So they come back and Chad says, "Oh, you guys still can't figure this out? Well, this is not my problem. We need an outside consultant. Outside consultant is the expert. They can do it." Outside consultant comes in, and now all of the directors are involved together. They've spent money, they have spent time, and the conflicts are growing. They come to Chad and they say, "Chad, We need you to lead here. We need your clarity. We need you to help resolve this conflict. Oh, well, this must be your problem because I'm not afraid to lead. And then everything starts to fall apart. 1, 2, 3 years later, Chad leaves because conflict is so bad here. Except it happens to Chad at the next place and the next. Because without facing conflict, the relationship ends. And here's the thing. You can't go over conflict. You can't go under it. You can't even outsource it. You have to learn how to go through it. No one else can have your conflict for you. You can't just bring somebody in and think that solves the problem. Your leadership will rise and fall on your ability to manage conflict because leadership is rooted in relationships, and how we face conflict determines the strength of our relationships. Conflict resolution is first a posture and then a set of skills. So the posture that we have in conflict resolution is it's the two of us together against the problem out there. You and me, the people, are together on a team. And the problem that we're resolving is out there. We're not fighting against the person. We're solving the problem. You must do the practice coaching work. You must learn the skills of giving good feedback and managing difficult people. And it's challenging and it's messy because we're not perfect and it changes all the time. But people are worth it. Your peace is worth it. If you avoid conflict, you manufacture fake peace. Conflict is an opportunity to truly lead. We have this expectation that peaceful relationships at work and with friends are conflict-free relationships. And that just sets all of us up for shame and failure because it's a lie. Researchers Canary, Kupak, and Messman write, conflict is a natural and even inevitable aspect of ongoing relationships. Ongoing relationships always have conflict. It's not because you're a bad leader or you have a bad team. It's because we are imperfect people living in an imperfect world, and we have to learn how to solve it. So what do we do with the inevitability of conflict? First, accept it. Accept that conflict is happening and will happen. Next, use it as an opportunity. Your team can become stronger when working through conflict. Patrick Leccioni is an organizational health expert, and he writes, teamwork begins by building trust. All real relationships have conflict. It is an opportunity to build trust. So you remember those 3 hours I was going to give you? Those 3 hours are the weekly time cost of the impacts of managing unresolved conflict during a 40-hour work week in the United States. I imagine it's similar in other countries around the world. We all know the costs are greater than those 3 hours a week. Divides in our nation, our organizations, our friendships, our relationships, even the conflict in ourselves. Those are far greater costs. But I have an opportunity for you. See conflict as good. See conflict as the opportunity for goodness. If you can lead seeing conflict as the opportunity it can be, Lead by seeing conflict as the only way to peace.